Hi, good afternoon. How's everybody?
Good afternoon.
Good
Hi, good
afternoon.
afternoon, Brian. Good afternoon, Aura.
Good
Hi.
afternoon.
Hey, how's Michael? Um, I see Khalid is just joining. Now, let me share my screen. Let me start sharing my screen. So I see five people. Basically, I see five people in the collaborate session. Let me quickly check how many are in the how many have signed into today's forum. Okay, I see six people, so almost everyone is in the collaborate. Yeah, and I see seven here. So if I have seven here and I have nine in the today's forum. Okay, so uh, that means if I have only seven here, one more person should nine means including myself. So and there
I
should
can
be
I
eight
can do
people.
this.
Hmm?
Sorry, Professor. I'll do this right now. I forgot about this. I'll
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that now.
Please don't forget. Please don't forget, because that's your physical proof of attendance. So without this record, you will forfeit your attendance, right? That's the first order of business. All right. Another one. Jason Thomas is joining. Let me just type in the. Okay. Uh, Let me type in. Just pop this into the chat box. All right. So I hope everybody can read this and remember to sign into today's forum. All righty. So the practice test, the ROI concept check is over, and some people may wonder. So is it okay if I don't do that because this doesn't necessarily factor into uh, the semester grade? But it's gonna help. Look, it doesn't factor into your semester grade, but it can help. There was a student who asked that question, by email yesterday. Uh, he was asking, so I believe you can see my screen. Does graded for self-assessment mean that it will just help teach us what we don't know for actual tests in the future? Yeah, it also means that, and also it means, although this assignment was originally issued only as a practice, It can also be used as a basis for extra credit, makeup, or for supplementing the lower score, if and only if necessary, for those who fall into at-risk region. And what is the at-risk? That's below B minus at the end of the semester. Okay, so whether which grade you will fall into, it can only be determined at the end of the semester after I have collected all the data, right? So there is no letter grade just yet, but think about it. And I showed you the example at before. Let's see. You remember the only four exams that factor into the semester grade are quiz 1, midterm, quiz 2, and final. Everything else is just practice. Now, but midterm and final are 25% of your semester grade. Quiz 1 and quiz 2 are 20% each. So midterm and final are 25% each, so they make up 50%. And the quiz 1, quiz 2 will make up 40%. Your attendance and participation is 10% plus, right? Because you also earn participation points when you answer, if you answer my questions. But anyway, suppose, but you, let's say, for whatever reason, you missed midterm. And since the midterm is 25%, this is a big chunk of your grade, a big chunk of your semester grade. And with the 25% of the data missing, you'll be far inferior to the average of the class, right?
Yeah.
It goes without saying, if you're missing 25% of the data, then you will be falling behind, significantly falling behind the rest of the class. Now, somehow, if you make up the missing exam before the end of the semester, then fine. But by the end of the semester, you even you neglected all that, and you ended up with missing that midterm data. But at least if you have done all your practice problems, right? As I said, there will be one more practice problem in the first topic, and from the second topic, it will be all on Connect. Okay, chapter problems on Connect. And if you have done all those chapter problems, practice problems, I will use the average. I will use the average of those, practice chapter problems, and substitute that for the missing 25%, the midterm, right? It can be quiz 1 or quiz 2, but whatever you have missed, will be replaced by the average of all the practice problems. And if you are still, let's say you didn't miss anything, but you still fall into the at-risk category. You still fall into B minus and below. Then I can use, for example, you did all 4 exams, but your midterm was very low, and that is pulling down your weighted average. Then what do? And if you have done all those practice problems, chapter problems, and I'll take the average of that, and whichever is greater, whichever is higher. If the average of all the practice problems is higher, then I will replace the lowest exam score, your lowest exam score, with the average of all your practice problems. Okay? Of course, if only that means provided that your average of practice problems is higher than your lowest score. That way, it may not bump up your grade, significantly, but at least it will marginally push up your grade. For example, if you were marginally below B minus, this will definitely put you to B minus. And if you are at like C range, C category, C range, it may not significantly boost it to B minus, but at least it will push it up to C plus. Okay. Now,
Professor, I have two questions.
Yeah.
So my first question is, I'm not registered for Connect in this class. Do I already have Excel classwork or not yet?
Nothing has been assigned yet. I mean, you will, as when we get to topic 2, then the first chapter problem will be assigned in Connect.
Mm-hmm.
And so get your Connect access code ASAP. If you have ordered the book, and from the McGraw-Hill's microsite, you need to request the tracking number, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you email them, ask for tracking number. If they have already shipped it, you need the tracking number. If they say it hasn't been shipped yet, you must ask them to provide you with the tracking number upon shipping.
Well,
And in an unfortunate event when if their shipment is delayed, so you may not be able to get the book and the access code before the first chapter problem is on, then I will.
When's the first chapter problem?
Huh?
When is the first chapter problem?
I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But we are not into topic 2 yet. Okay?
Okay.
We're not into topic 2 yet, so it's not on yet, and it's not. It's first in the order. It's not chapter 1. It's chapter 2 actually in the Connect. Where was I? I was please don't distract
Professor,
me, because don't distract me, please. I will give you time to ask question, because I was in the middle of saying something, and you interrupted me, and then I lost train of my thought. What I was trying to say was, so if the shipping of the book, if the shipping of the book is delayed significantly, in time for your first Connect, chapter problem, then I will request temporary access code, right? I will request, but they will give temporary access code only temporary access code is only for 2 weeks, but hopefully you will all get the book and the access code in before then. Yes, someone was trying to ask a question, right? Who was that?
Yes, it was me.
Yeah, you can go ahead now. Is it Aura who was speaking?
Yes, Aura.
Okay, Aura, go ahead.
So yes, it was basically that I brought the book like 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
But it's not here yet.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not
You see,
really. And I called the company, and they said like they were going to email me with my tracking number, and they never did. So I don't really know.
okay, alrighty. Um, so they said, did they say they have? Did they say they will get you the tracking number? But they haven't.
They said like the book they don't really have the tracking number clear yet because it was from the warehouse that they have.
Yeah, yeah,
But
okay, yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
but they said they were going to email me with updates because it was 2 weeks
Mm-hmm,
ago and it should be
mm-hmm.
here.
Okay. Another thing is, the as I said, the book isn't pre-printed, right? I mean, they had pre-printed books, but those pre-printed books were already shipped to the bookstore, and the bookstore, other than the pre-printed books, then a bookstore has already pre-ordered during the summer, so they must have books, that delivered that they have ordered. And if you are ordering through their microsite, then they will need to print a book from the scratch, and then they won't print it just by one copy. They will have to wait for at least minimum order quantity to accumulate, and then they will print. So it would take time. But as I said, if the book doesn't arrive in time, I will ask for temporary access code, and I will also, um, Aura, please send me an email about this. Then I will send me an email today about this, and I can give you the contact information of the McGraw Hill's campus representative, and then uh, you can talk to her or him uh, in case the book it takes more time, and at least they should be more they should respond, they should behave more responsibly. If they said they would get you the tracking number, uh, at least they should, even they can only provide tracking number once the book is shipped. And if the book is not shipped yet, then they cannot. There's no tracking number, obviously. But at least they should give you an idea, some more specific time frame when the book will be shipped. But if you haven't got any response, since then, um,
Yes.
uh,
Uh-huh. Yes, I actually talked to them. I called them, and they told me that they were going to send an email. They didn't, so I don't know if I gave the wrong email. I don't know. The
well,
point is,
they sent an email. So you got to check your spam folder then. If they really sent the email, it must be somewhere. Uh,
yes, I'm
Check
gonna
the
do it.
spam folder. Yeah, and if it is not there, then please send me an email. Then I will get you the contact information of their campus representative. Alrighty, so I'm you can see that my volume is at 75%, right? So uh, please speak up because I don't want to raise the volume more than above 50%. But when it is at 50%, I can barely hear you. So when maybe it's you need to raise the volume of your microphone, or you need to speak up a little. Alrighty, so that's enough of that. I just want you to make sure that since I see how many people here, 13, and that means every do I have 13 people here? Uh, I have 14, 15. That means excluding myself, there must be 14 people. If any one of you here is not, if you're, and there are 13, so one person is not in the collaborate, right? At least one person is not in the collaborate. That's fine. That's too bad for that person. Um, Alrighty, so let me go. So I believe, on our last class was on September 1st. That was already 2 weeks ago. And at the time, we didn't quite wrap this up. But, since this is not the main lecture, everything was already discussed in the main lecture. So I'm not going to dwell on this anymore. Because, it's going to be endless, if we, so we need to move on to the next next segment of this topic, which is interest rates. And now I hear constantly some ding. That means somebody's dropping a chat in the chat box. But when I'm looking at this, I can't see what's going on in the chat box. So if it is for me, please say it. Okay. What do you mean? Can we make one? Okay, somebody, can we make one? What do you mean? There isn't one.
Professor, I was just
Oh,
saying.
group chat.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was
okay,
just
group
saying
chat.
that it would be helpful
Okay.
to be able to
Yeah,
communicate with other
yeah.
students.
I guess other sections all do that. Other sections, I teach 4 sections of this course, this class, and all the other sections are doing, and 2 other courses, and they are also all doing group chat.
Okay.
So let me. So our topic is basically return on investment, and if you think about it, interest rate is the most basic form of return on investment, right? When I say most basic, that means riskless. Now, think about it. All investments inevitably involve risk. Okay, and the risk is what? Risk is the uncertainty. Risk is the uncertainty of not getting your money back, right? It's not just not getting your own, not only getting your money back. I mean, getting your money back means only getting principal back. But especially in stock, particularly in stock, risk is the volatility or the deviation from the expected return, right? Volatility around the expected return. That means you're deviating from the expected return. Okay, and most of the times people think about the downside risk, right? Downside risk means getting a lower return than the expected return, right? Getting a lower return, downside, right? But even getting a higher return than the expected return is part of the risk. Why? Because it's volatility. Volatility of the return isn't only deviating downward. It's also deviating also upward, right? But of course, if it is an higher than expected return, nobody will perceive it as a risk. It's a pleasant surprise, but it is still a risk in the sense that it makes the return less predictable, right? Because the volatility makes the the expected return more unpredictable. That's why it is the risk. But bank interest rate, think about it. The bank interest rate is risk-free, right? If you put your money in the bank, right, the interest they pay you is a completely riskless, although it is very, very mediocre, right? Now, if you think about it, I want to show you. These days, everyone knows, everyone knows if you put, money in the bank, you don't even get 0.1% a year, right? Everyone must have experience. If you have savings account, anyway, checking account doesn't pay any interest. Some checking account used to pay interest in the old days, but just to entice, customers. But checking accounts basically don't pay any interest. Savings accounts these days don't pay even 0.1% a year. So you might say, is it really worth it? Well, it's better than nothing, right? But again, it wasn't always like this. Back in there was a time when the interest on the savings account was even as high as like 15% a year. Of course, all the rates are annualized, of course. All the rates, I've been telling you, all the rates. That's why we talked about the geometric average and annualized return. All the rates must be always expressed as annual. And back in 1984, 85, around that time, that was the time when interest rates were like 15% a year. And historically, the average, interest rate over the last 100, 200 years, maybe not 200 years, but as long as we can trace back, as long as we have data, at least for the last 150 years, the average, annual rate was about 6%. And even in the early 2000s, even until like 2005, the savings account was paying about 3%. CDs were paying better than that. Now, CDs, you must understand what CDs are, certificate of deposit. And certificate of deposit is just another type of savings account. But then, unlike the savings account, which is not bounded, right? Meaning, it's not a contractual agreement. Savings account is not a contractual agreement, right? But CDs are contract. It's a contract. It's a contractual agreement, meaning you are lending the bank the money for a fixed period of time, like 2 years, right? So during those 2 years, you cannot withdraw the money. If you withdraw the money, then you are breaching the contract. And if you breach the contract, obviously you will you won't get the promised interest, and you will even pay penalty, right? Of course, the penalty is like giving up the interest accrued so far, or a part of it, a significant part of it. But the idea is, it's a binding contract. Whereas just the regular savings account is not a binding contract. You can put your money there, but you can make withdrawals, right? If you put, $10,000 in the savings account, there is no restriction, like, there is no prohibition that there's no there's no banning of withdrawing money. But of course, there's a limitation. If you withdraw money more than very frequently, more than 2 times a month or something like that, they will want you to. They will send you a letter saying that they advise you to turn it into a checking account. And the reason for that is they cannot. If the money you have in your savings account is of it's not a demand deposit. Demand deposit means, you know, when you demand, they will have to give up the money. That's demand deposit. But that's checking account. Checking account is demand deposit. A savings account is not a demand deposit. And the reason for savings account and the reason they pay interest in the savings account is because they are lending that money to someone else, right? And if you constantly and frequently withdraw your savings account, the balance of the reserve they can loan out cannot be maintained. And if you withdraw, then you know and they cannot maintain the balance, and the loan cannot be. They will have to, if this happens on a massive scale, they will have to recall the loan, which is also. Think about it. Loan is a contract, right? If you got a loan from a bank, they cannot recall it until
You pay it
the
back.
maturity. Mhm.
Until you pay it back.
What's that?
They can't take it back until it's fully paid.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Please speak up.
Never mind.
No. I told you to raise the volume of your microphone. Okay, So say that again, please.
So I said that you're saying that a bank can't take back a loan until it's fully paid back.
Yes, basically, no, they can't, because you know, but they can if you are not making, you know, a monthly payment. If you are not making monthly payment, if you default, I mean, when they make a loan, right, you are paying back through monthly payments, installment, right?
Yeah.
Installment.
Exactly.
And if you default consistently, just defaulting once, it's not a big deal. They can give you give you leniency. They can, you know,
Let it
but if
slide.
they can let it slide. But you have to make, you know, you have to make up, you know, what you missed. I mean, if you missed
Yeah.
the payment this month, you know, before next month, you will have to make it up, right?
Mhm.
They don't just let it slide, you know, because they are getting their principal and interest back that way through every monthly payments,
Yeah.
right? But you know, they can give you a leeway if you you know, they don't just take it back, you know. But if you continue to, let's say you miss the payments, you know, several times, if you default several times, then uh, they can cancel the loan, and they can, you know, uh, they can request the principal payment back, early payment. But think about it: who breached the contract in this case? Who breached the contract? Did the bank breach the contract? Huh? No, they didn't.
No,
You breached the contract if you missed the if you
by not
defaulted.
paying.
Right, by not paying. So that's not a breach. You breached the contract, and they have the right to uh, demand the, you know, loan back, demand the money back. But then, look, um, usually, you know, if you have nothing. I mean, for example, you're completely broke. How can they get their money back? That is, you know, in case you're getting a loan, the loan is not uh, the loan. They don't give you a loan without any collateral. First of all, think about it. They don't give you a loan without any collateral, right? There's got to be a
Yeah.
collateral. So in case you default, they can just simply repossess the collateral. Okay,
Can
do
you
you
give an
understand?
example?
Hmm?
Can you give me an example of collateral that a bank would have from you?
Yeah, of course. Uh, Two things. It's very obvious. You got a loan to buy a house.
Uh-huh.
Okay? What's called mortgage
Yeah.
loan. Okay, mortgage. You got a mortgage. So you make payment. So your loan was like, you know, $500,000. You
Okay.
bought, you know, and you bought a $600,000 house, and $600,000. So that means $100,000 was your down payment. That's your own money. The
Yeah.
loan is 500,000 only. The reason they are giving you the loan is because the house can be put up as collateral already. You understand?
Yeah.
Because they paid for out of 60,000, right?
Yeah.
5/6 was paid for by the loan. So
Yeah.
you don't have the title of the house until you pay it off,
Mm-hmm.
right? The title
So
is with them, so they can always
repossess your house.
repossess,
Uh-huh.
right? They can always
Yeah.
repossess on the
What about with the
so
business?
that's a collateral, and whether you like it or not, the house is automatically becoming collateralized, right?
Yeah.
It's automatically collateralized. Otherwise, they won't give you the loan, right? So they can easily.
Uh-huh.
And car, if you buy a car, and usually you don't pay if you're buying a
Upfront.
$50,000 car, you don't pay out a $50,000 upfront,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're a billionaire, I mean, if you're a billionaire, maybe you can, but still, it's not a smart idea, right? Uh, if the if you buy a car, I mean, if you finance the car, and if the interest on the financing, if the interest on that loan is cheaper than the return on investment that you can potentially have. So in other words, if the interest on financing is lower than the investment opportunity, the return on investment from the your investment opportunity, it's a better idea. I mean, if the interest on the loan is only 5%, but you can make uh, uh, so you make a down payment, of course. Let's say 10,000. $40,000 is your loan, and with the $40,000, you already had money. You're a billionaire, so you can for you it's nothing. It's a piece of cake to pay cash up front, but you don't do that. Why? Because you just make a down payment, and with the $40,000, if you can invest it in something that can give you a 10% return annually, then this is a much better deal, isn't it right? You just finance
Yeah.
it at 5%, but so you pay 5% interest a year for the next 5 years. But if you can make this, 10% return from your investment consistently for the next 5 years, this is a win. This is a only a win-win situation for you, right?
Wait, Professor, so in other words, you basically paid $10,000 for the car, right?
What? Say
So
that
in,
again. I'm sorry. I was shutting down the window.
no, it's fine, it's fine. So basically, you said you put a $10,000 payment, and if you're earning 5% in profits from your investment, then that means you would it would make you would only have paid $10,000 for the car, right? And then
No, 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 no. What I said was you make a down payment. Let's say you made a down payment of 10,000.
10,000, yeah.
Yeah. That's your equity. That's your own money, right? And you borrow, and then you finance the other $40,000. I mean, if you're buying a $50,000 car, right? You make a down payment of 10K, and the other 40K is a loan from a lender, from a bank. Okay? And because it's a loan, you pay interest on it. And if the interest is 5% a year, right? You'll be paying 5% interest, every year. But and of course, it's through the monthly payments. But the $40,000 that you kept, I told you, you're a billionaire. If you're a billionaire, even if you're a billionaire, you don't pay $50,000 up front. That is the scenario, Okay, why? You still, finance it. Why? Because, just by making a down payment of 10K, um, and, financing the other 40,000, um, you pay only 5% interest on it every year for the next 5 years. But, uh, with the 40,000 that you kept, that you retained, right? Not using on this car, not using to buy this car, you can put it into an investment opportunity that can give you 10% return. I mean, if it can give you consistently 10% return over the next 5 years, um, you are basically actually, making 5% return. You
By
understand?
owning a car, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. But
Yeah. So are
you
you making money by owning the car just because invested that money into the, like let's say I put it into like 40K into a dividend, right? And it gives me 10% returns. So
okay?
that means I would be,
Yeah, yeah. Dividend is not the right term there, but yeah, you put it in, you put that 40K into stock, but you borrowed 40K to buy the car, and uh, the interest on that loan is 5%. But your own 40K, right? That you didn't use on the car, your own 40K, you put it into a 10%. Uh, you put it into a stock or an asset that gives you, consistently, 10% a year. Then because it's 10% on 40K every year. That 10% is 4,000 4K, and your interest every year. I mean, it's not exactly working this way, but just to be simple, you pay 5% on 40K on the loan for the car. That's 2K, right? So every year, your return from the investment is automatically pay. It's more than paying for the interest on your loan, right? It's paying uh, more than for the interest on the loan, and still leaves you with 5%. You understand?
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Only if you can find an investment opportunity that gives you better return than the interest rate on the loan, right? Of
Yeah.
course, it's not that difficult. It's not that rare. It's not that difficult to uh, get a more than 5% return on your investment, right? I mean, if your interest rate on the loan is 5%, and if you are doing if you select, um, if you do good portfolio management, from your investment portfolio, you get more than 5% a year. I mean, most likely, right? So anyway, the point is, why am I, what was I? As I said, interest rate is really uh, these days, the actual interest rate is really, really, really mediocre. Not even 0.1%. CDs pay slightly better than that. CDs pay probably 0.5%. I don't know. But it's I was saying it wasn't always like this. There was a time back in 1980s, like 85, uh, bank interest rate was like 15%. Even 2000, early 2000s, interest rate was, bank interest rate was even like 3%. Uh, but you might wonder, why is it like this? Why is it so? Interest rates are so uh, bad, these days. And was it then, 1980, early 1980s, 85, 84? Then must have been great years. Then must have been great years. No, actually, no. Early 1980s, it was, uh, a severe recession. Those were the years of severe recession. And why was, interest rate that high? First of all, think about it. High interest rate is not necessarily a good thing. Why? If you're a saver, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? If you're a saver, it's a terrible thing. But if you are a borrower, uh, high interest rate, if you're I'm sorry, I said it, if you're a saver, high interest rate is a wonderful thing. Isn't it right? High interest rate is a wonderful thing if you're a saver. But if you're a borrower, high interest rate is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Hmm?
Exactly.
And think about it. The economy runs on actually borrowing. If you think about it. Why? Suppose you're starting up a business. You need a startup capital, right?
Yeah.
You need a startup capital. Where
Yeah.
would you get the startup capital from?
The bank.
Huh? From the bank, of course.
Yeah.
That is theoretically from the bank, but it's gonna be very difficult to get a loan in reality. Why? Because you
If they
have
have no proof.
nothing,
Yeah.
no proof, right? Nothing physical. In other words, you have just this great idea, and you go to the bank. Are they gonna buy that great idea? Is
No.
that great idea? Does that great idea have any collateral value? No. Bank doesn't
You need
bet
to.
on your idea. Bank
Yeah.
always bets. If you have like let's say you have a $1 million house.
Hmm.
If you have a $1 million house with no debt, right? With no loan, you paid off your mortgage. You have your house is $10 million. You're already very wealthy. That means already. Your house is $10 million. With it's all your equity. You paid off your mortgage, so no loan. And you have great cars. You have Lamborghini. You have Porsche. You have Bentley. You have like 5 cars like that. And they are all like they sell for at least $100,000 in the market. And 5 of them, right? That's $500,000. Then you can put them up as collateral, and they will lend you money, and they won't even lend you. I mean, 100% of that collateral value. They will probably lend up to 75 to 80% of the collateral value. But if you have nothing like that, just a great idea, no. But theoretically, let's say nowhere else. In reality, if you have really a great idea, you can try to reach out to a venture capital, because venture capital are literally, they are taking, really the risk. I mean, they are. That's why they are called venture capital. They are on an adventure, and if the idea is plausible and if it is amenable to actual, business, then they will bet on your idea and they can invest in you. But then let's say that's another story. So let's say you get a loan from the bank. Yeah, think about it. Even if you are already a going concern, meaning your business, it's already in business, you're already in business, and then you want to expand your business. You want to expand your business. You need to invest more in the capacity, production capacity of your business, and etc. Or even plant space, store space, things like that. Still need capital. Where do you raise capital from? Bank. So when the bank lends money, it will stimulate the economy because it increases hiring. It increases employment, right? A business that
It
is
increases commerce.
expanding, yeah, a business that is trying to expand borrows money, and when with the borrowed money, what what does that company do? They will expand their production capacity, meaning they will have to build more plant, more factories. More factories means more equipment, right? So basically,
Yeah.
construction company will benefit from it because they will build it, and the company that makes
Employees.
manufacturing equipment will benefit from it, right? Because the new equipment will be purchased, and so they will produce new equipment, and then this expanding business will hire more workers because they are expanding,
Exactly.
right? That's more more jobs, more pay, more salaries, as they get paid, they spend money. As this construction firm gets the construction project, they pay their workers, they spend money. This manufacturing equipment firm, as they get this project, they will uh, they pay, they get paid and they pay their workers. The workers spend money. So economy, it feeds back into economy. All this feeds back into the economy, right? And the economy
Yeah.
gets stimulated. Economy grows. So think about it. It's very simple. Lending creates jobs. Lending stimulates the economy. But to stimulate the lending, what should be the interest rate be like? Hmm? Should the interest rate be low or should the interest rate be high? Huh?
Hi.
What? High?
No.
You are listening to me all this time and then you're saying high?
Turn.
To, to stimulate the economy, there should be more lending, and to stimulate the lending, then the interest rate must
Oh,
be.
I see. Yeah, you're right. It should be low.
Yeah, in other words, from borrowing, that means borrowing from the companies, right, that want to expand, right? The interest
Uh-huh.
rate must be low. So think
Yeah.
about it.
So more companies can get loans.
Can expand, right, grow, and hire more workers, hire more resources, right, hire more equipment, right? Now
Uh-huh.
think about it. Then, if interest rate is high, the opposite is the opposite, right? The economy will only cool off because it's not going to stimulate borrowing. It's going to discourage borrowing, right? Nobody will borrow. So that's why I'm telling you. That's why I was telling you that 1985, although the interest rates were even like 15%, it was not a good time. That was, 1980 through 85 were that was the period of, recession. But the recession was, it was, central bank induced recession. In other words, it was the recession uh, instigated and initiated by the Federal Reserve. Okay? And you might wonder, why would the Federal Reserve want to bring the economy into recession? It was because prior to 1980s, the entire decade of 1970s, especially the second half of 1970s, there was huge inflation. It wasn't hyperinflation, but it was very high inflation, right? High inflation means what? It was the economy was overheated, right? Economy was overheated. Um, Economy didn't grow that much, but economy did hardly grew, but only prices went up. So to then what does the central bank must do? What should the central bank do? They will have to curb the high inflation, and the only way to do that is to cool off the economy. To cool off the economy, they have to limit or restrict the borrowing, right? So they had to raise the interest rate, so the economy cooled off over like about a 5-year period. That was the during the Reagan era. Um, So here we need to define borrowing rate and lending rate, uh, because now you understand the business of the bank is mainly in lending, because by lending money, banks make money,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because by taking deposits, they don't make money, because by taking deposit, then they will have to pay you interest. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So, but then they must earn that interest from somewhere. They must earn the interest that they pay you from somewhere, and they must earn more than enough just to pay you. Because if the interest they pay you is 3%, they must earn at least, like, 7% or 10%, so that they pay you 3%, and at least they keep 7% for themselves. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, so here's the thing. When they lend money to you, that's when you are borrowing, right? And when you put your money in the bank, that's when you are lending to them, and they are borrowing from you. But you probably think, well, so when I put my money in the bank, when I put my $1,000 in the bank, so I loaned them money? Yes, you did. You just didn't realize it. You just passively lended them money. It just happened passively. Isn't that right? Why are they paying you interest? Because you lended them money, right? When you put your money in the savings account, of course they have to attract customers. They have to attract the savers, so they pay interest. But of course, the main reason for paying interest is because uh, other banks are also paying interest, and they have to remain competitive. I mean, if they are not paying interest, they will never get any deposits. But not only because of that, the main reason is because it is a borrowing from their point of view. It is a lending from your point of view. You never intentionally lended to them, but passively there was a lending. You're lending to them, and passively they borrowed from you. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that rate is called borrowing rate. That rate is called borrowing rate. Why? Because it's from the industry standpoint. From the industry standpoint, from the bank's standpoint, they borrowed money from you, so it's a borrowing rate. You have to pay. They have to pay you interest rate, and that's the borrowing rate. You're not borrowing; they are borrowing from you. Okay, so uh, and then when you borrow money from them, they are lending to you, and the interest rate is called lending rate. So it's all from the bank's perspective, right? Because they are the industry. Uh, this terminology is, based on, determined from the industry perspective. Okay, everyone understands that?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
all
rates
right.
are from two different
And
Yes.
sides, you mean?
yeah, yeah, of course. And it's mainly the industry that calls the shot, right? It's mainly the industry that calls the shot, not you. And then here you see the difference here, because when you these days when you put your money in the bank, you don't even get 0.1%. But when you borrow money from the bank, you will see that your interest rate is, in other words, their lending rate is something like 5%, 7%, 8%, 10%. How come there is such a big difference? Of course, there should be such a big difference, because that's how banks make money. And this difference between the lending rate and borrowing rate is called the spread. And the wider the bigger the spread, the more the bank is making. Right? Makes sense.
Yes.
Um, and your lending rate, in other words, when the banks lend to you, that rate depends on your credit rating. Now, individual's credit rating is called credit score. And if your credit score is good, what is good credit score? Something above like 760, I believe, is good credit score. And if your credit score is excellent, what is excellent credit score? Something above 820. Credit score above 820 is excellent credit score, and that's only less than 5% of the entire U.S. population. If you have credit score of 820 and above, that means you are top 5% of the U.S. population. Of course, the top 5% means top 5% credit rating, not necessarily top 5% wealthy, right? And if your if your credit score is excellent, you will get prime rate. Prime rate is actually conventionally like 3% above the Fed funds rate, and I'm going to have to talk about the Fed funds rate later. But if you and because Fed funds rate these days are just about 0 to 0.25%. 3% above it is like 3.25, and if you can borrow at 3.25%, then means you are an excellent credit rating. And then and it's obvious, good higher credit rating is means lower risk for the lender, and the risk in this case means default risk. Of course, think about it. In lending, there are four types of risk in lending, in the credit market lending. One is the default risk. Second one is inflation risk. Third one, liquidity risk. Fourth one, inflation risk. Maturity risk. I already said inflation risk. But the greatest risk is, of course, the default risk, because when you think about it, what is the main factor you would consider if you're lending money? Huh?
If you can get a return.
Yeah, whether you can get your money back.
Yeah.
Right? That's whether the borrower will default or not. That's the greatest concern. And if the borrower has the excellent credit score, that concern can be you can forget about it, right? So higher the credit rating, the default risk is lower, so interest rate can be lower. The lower the credit rating, that means you are a high risk to the lender. The interest rate will have to go up, right?
Yeah.
So there are two different rates: lending rate and borrowing rate. Borrowing rates are all the same, regardless of your credit score. It doesn't depend on your credit score because it's the bank that's borrowing from you. You get not even 0.1%. But lending rate, there's huge difference in lending rate depending on your individual credit score. Yeah. Someone was trying to ask something.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah. And who is this?
So
Khalid.
Yes. So the interest rate varies from person to person, right?
Yeah, the lending rate varies from person to
The
person.
lending rate, yeah. So
Lending rate, which
if
is when you are borrowing.
I understand. So if I'm a person that wants to get a loan from the bank, is there anything I can do to make my lending rate, the interest rate lower,
Low?
or is it
Yeah.
impossible to change?
Well, at this point, when you are young and when you don't have credit history, your credit score will be very low,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you might say, what if I pay off my credit card and blah, blah. It doesn't help that much. I mean, it helps, of course, if you don't have low credit balance but credit card is really not something that they look at. First of all, to get a loan, the biggest the biggest factor is whether you have assets. In other words, whether you have a house, or whether you have something that you can put up as a collateral. If you have a huge amount of collateral, wonderful. course, even if your credit score isn't that good, if you have something to put up as collateral, yes, you can.
So that's how
Then,
you can change your chances.
yeah, but look, uh, you are all, you are all students, and you are all, just about, 19, 20, 21, at best, 25, and most, maybe more, but, who amongst you have a $1 million home, to your name? That's obviously out of the question,
Yeah.
right? That's obviously out of the question. So in reality, what you can do is, uh, if you get a small loan. I mean, you can buy a car, a small loan in case of, if you buy a small car, less than, like $30,000 car, and get a loan, like, obviously you finance it, like, that's going to be like 20, let's say $25,000, I mean, even used car, get a loan, finance it, and uh, if a used car is like, a small amount, like, $15,000, and you got a $10,000 loan, you make payment, and this must be something within your manageable, something that within your manageable boundaries, right? You should be able to make, if monthly payment is like $300, you should make that, and if it should be manageable, because if you skip the payment, if your credit score will be ruined. So if it is manageable, you make this payment without skipping, without, on time. So in other words, show the regularity. Show over the 5-year period or 3-year period, if you make this, payment on regular basis without any interruption, that shows regularity, and regularity is the dependability. Okay, and they want to see that you are dependable. So that's the best way to improve your credit score, to build your credit score. Um, get a small loan that you can manage, and
Pay it off.
make payments. Yeah, no, they don't like to see, suddenly, I mean, you have like 3 years to pay. If you have 3 years to pay, keep those 3 years. Don't pay it off in the first year. That's
Why?
not a good thing,
Why?
right? Because um, the more regularity, the more dependability that you show, that's what raises your credit score.
Okay. Because
Okay,
I
but paying it
feel
off, it's not. It's, you think, just by paying. Look, if when you are, throughout, when what would a teacher think, about a student when, let's say you were going to school from, elementary school or kindergarten to high school. That's K through 12. All those years, uh, 12 years, or 13 years you went to public schools. And what would the teacher think if you happen to skip, cutting classes, very, I mean, you do well in uh, class, you do well in classes, but, you are, without any warning, you show erratic behaviors.
Mhm.
You show erratic behaviors. Uh, there's a long, gap in. Uh, no matter how talented you are, no matter how smart you are, you're not a reliable person.
I see.
If you have, erratic behavior,
Yeah.
right? Suddenly, cutting classes for, 5 weeks in a row, suddenly show up, and then, Look, that's not reliable character,
Yeah,
right?
but paying a loan in like, let's say, 1.5 years instead of 3 years would not
No,
be.
that doesn't help. I told you that doesn't
I
help.
know, I know, I know. It's inconsistent, but it's good because you're showing them that you can pay faster than expected.
Again, yeah, that doesn't really help that much. But why? Because it's not really you. I mean, you could have came by a large sum of money, so you paid it
Yeah,
off. But
that's
it's
true.
not really you.
Yeah, that's
They
correct.
want to see, first of all, if you have asset to your name, that's one great factor. Two, you have a consistent income. In other words, a permanent job, and you have a consistent income. It's not like you had a job one day, but you lose the job. You had a good income one day, but suddenly your income is there's a long gap in your income. All these inconsistencies, those are negative factors. Inconsistencies and sudden spikes, sudden dips, sudden spikes. Those are all negative factors. They are not really good, positive factors. So if you show like consistent regularity, and think about it, your history, credit history. I mean, if it is 3 years, you paid it off in the first year, then your credit history is just 1 year. Shorter credit history is not
Yeah,
better than
but
it's obviously not good. It's worse than longer credit history. The longer you show your dependability, the more it, the more points that go into your credit score.
That
You
makes
you're
sense.
right.
understand?
Yeah, you're right.
Alrighty.
I
So
understand. I
that
understand.
was a lot of it's already Jesus. It's 2:14 now. I mean, we should have taken a break at around 2 or but because it's already 2:15. Let's just keep going, and I will break it up a little early, like 2:30. Okay, how does
Okay.
that sound?
Yeah,
Okay,
good.
all righty. So now you understand the difference between lending rate and borrowing rate, and how the credit score has to do with your lending rate. Now, there's also the difference between nominal interest rate and real interest rate. What is the nominal interest rate and a real? Nominal interest rate is the interest rate that you see, that you hear, that you um, when you go to the bank, they tell you you want to borrow money. They tell you your interest rate is 5%. That's nominal interest rate. Okay. Nominal interest rate. The symbol for nominal interest rate is I. That stands for interest rate. But let's say, so you borrowed. Uh, let's assume your interest rate is 10%. Your interest rate is 10%. And you're not borrowing. You're actually, lending. And suppose this was 1980s, and the time we are in 1980s, and uh, when you put your money in the bank, um, interest rate is like 10%. So just to make it easier for our thought experiment, so it's 10. You went to the bank and put your $10,000 in the bank, and they said, interest rate is 10%. So 1 year later, well, how much will be in your account 1 year later? Hmm?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Look, pay attention. I said you
I am.
put ten
No, I
thousand
am.
dollars in the bank,
Yeah, I read
right?
out loud.
And the interest
Yeah.
rate is 10%. So 1 year later, what's going to be there in your bank account? How much will be there in your bank account?
11,000.
11,000. Yes, of course. Yes, 11,000. So who gave me that answer? 11,000.
The
Two
bank.
voices, at least one. Two voices. Who was that?
It was
Um,
Jeffrey, and I don't know that.
and Aura.
Okay. Uh, okay, Amelda.
Aura, A-U-R-A.
Bora. Bora.
Aura,
Aura.
Aura.
Aura. Okay. Aura. Jeffrey and Aura. Jeffrey, what? Your last name? Jeffrey
Chen.
Chen.
Yeah.
C-H-E-N?
Yes, sir.
A-N? Okay. Jeffrey
E-N.
E-N? Okay. Jeffrey Chen and
Also.
Aura. So you're going to get 0.25 for. This is not a difficult. This wasn't a difficult question. Principal is 10. But so this is, I would say, an average answer because the question wasn't that difficult. So you got both,
Yeah.
0.25. And so, but then, so 1 year later, you have, $11,000. So you want to spend $11,000. You take out money. But then during this year, there was 20% inflation. There was 20% inflation. Then actually, if that means everything is 20% more expensive, right?
Yeah.
There has been.
Yeah.
Then, although nominally you have $11,000, nominally what you have is $11,000, but in terms of
Yeah.
purchasing power, you cannot buy what $11,000 could buy a year ago.
Yeah,
You
that's true.
understand? That's how you can buy much less, right? It's just like this. If a bottle of Coke was $1 last year, with $11,000, you could have bought how many bottles of Coke?
11,000.
Yeah, 11,000 bottles. And who was this?
Yeah. Khaled.
Who was this?
Khaled.
Khaled. Okay. Khaled. Okay.
Asabi.
Yeah. Khaled, right? All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's quite obvious, if with $11,000 last year, you could have bought 11,000 bottles of, Coke. Now, if there was no inflation, this year, you would still be able to buy 11,000 bottles of Coke,
That's correct.
right?
Yeah.
But then, because there was inflation, right? 20% inflation, that means a bottle of Coke is now $1.20,
Oh.
right? So with $11,000, how many bottles can you buy? Of course, you can divide it by, $1.2, right? And that obviously you can buy much less, right? You can buy much less. So that is,
You can only buy 9,160.
yeah, something like that. So that means what? Purchasing power of your money
Is less.
in real goods went down. Real means that. Real means, in terms of real goods, right? How much can you buy in terms of real goods, right? So nominal means simply nominally $11,000, but $11,000 cannot buy 11,000 Coke bottles of Coke. So real after adjusting for inflation, that's real. So think about it. So you 10% inflation. 10% interest is actually, although you have a 10% interest, but because inflation was 20%, in real terms, your return is. Can you answer me? In real terms, because although 10% nominally interest rate was 10%, but since there was 20% inflation, in real terms, your real return was actually what? Nobody can answer this, isn't it? Isn't that obvious?
I'm sorry. Can you give me the numbers again?
Numbers were already given. You had 10% nominally. You had 10% interest rate,
Okay.
right?
Nice.
10%
Yeah.
interest rate, but the inflation was 20%.
Okay.
So what is the return? What is the real return on your money? What is the real interest rate then?
10%.
10%? How can it be 10%? It was nominally 10% and inflation was 20%. How can it be 10%?
Do you want a number or a percentage?
Yeah, I want the number. I mean, percentage is the number.
Honestly, I'm confused. I don't know how to calculate it.
What do you mean you don't know how to calculate it? It's right in your face. Look, I don't know why this is so big. Oh, God. Okay, I will have to, so think about it.
Okay.
Nominal interest rate is 10%.
Okay.
Inflation is 20%. And don't you see there in the slide what I wrote there? Nominal interest rate is real interest rate plus inflation. That pi stands for inflation. Then,
Okay.
Oh, yes. Okay.
because I wrote there already, then what is the real interest rate? Huh? R stands for real interest rate, meaning
Would it be
after
negative
yeah
10%?
yeah. Who gave me that? Who gave me that?
Oh, it's Jeffrey again.
Jeffrey. I'll give
Yeah.
you another 0.25 for that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Khalid also got 0.25 before. Yeah,
Thank you.
because then real interest rate is
Negative 10.
yeah I minus inflation I minus pi, right? So it will have to be negative 10, right?
Yeah.
That is exactly why you have less purchasing power. That's exactly why you have less purchasing power. Now, again, the way you make it, this is when you because you're dealing with only percentage, right? Nominal interest rate was 10%, inflation was 20%, so real interest rate is simply I minus pi, so it's negative 10%. Uh, because it's already they are all percentage, you can add or subtract. But if it is not percentage, but let's say in dollars, nominally you have 1 year later, what you have will be that's future value at year one, at the end of year one. What you have is 11K, right? And the 1 plus pi, why 1 plus pi? This is gross inflation, right? Inflation is 20%, but think about it. A bottle of Coke is now $1.20. A bottle of Coke is now $1.20. Why? Because it's a dollar times 1.2, right?
Yeah.
It went up by inflation, so a dollar times 1.2, right? So this is the gross inflation, right? Gross. 20% is net inflation. So then you want to make adjustment for and the reason, you divide it by. So think about it. Everything that's nominal, but this is real, FV1 in real terms. This was in nominal terms. What should it be? Then it's 11K divided by 1.2. And of course, we already did it, when I gave you, that Coke example. How many bottles of Coke can you buy? That's exactly what this is, right? How many bottles of Coke can you buy with that? Because a Coke is $1.20. You don't have to divide it by $1.20. But the point is, what I'm saying is you don't have to put a dollar sign here. But the point is by factor. This is the factor by which it grew, right? This is the factor by which the price grew. So you divide it by 1.2 and you get
9,166.
Yeah, something like 2. And making adjustment for that in dollars, I mean, if this is 1.2, just the factor, then this will be the dollar. This will be 9,000, whatever, 9,160 something.
66.
So that's the purchasing power, 900, 166.67. Okay, that's the what that $11,000 is worth today in real purchasing power, in terms of real purchasing power. If I put dollar sign here, then I'm dividing 11K by the price of a bottle of Coke. Then this will come out as, not dollar, but this will be the number of bottles, right? Number of bottles. It's the same thing. Yeah. So if you got this idea, then then you understand what is real interest rate and nominal interest rate. And the thing is, so you might wonder, what is is negative interest rate is possible? I mean, what is negative interest rate? Negative interest rate is actually loss in your interest. Negative interest. So how can anybody pay negative interest rate? Actually, you are not paying negative. The bank. Think of it this way: if you, as a lender, you would normally, get interest. Yeah, nominally you got $1,000 interest. So 11,000 nominally you have now $11,000. But in terms of purchasing power in real terms, actually your money is now worth less than your original principal. It's not even right. So actually, what happened? You paid interest to the borrower. You understand? You paid interest to the borrower. Rather than the borrower paying you interest, you paid interest. Of course, the borrower will say, "I paid you interest. You lended me 10,000, and I gave you back 11,000. I gave you promised rate." Yeah, nominally, but because of the inflation, the unintended effect is that the lender actually paid interest. Okay, but this is a terrible thing, of course. If you're the lender, this is the terrible thing, isn't that right? but put yourself in the other end of the table. If you're the borrower, isn't this a wonderful news? If you're the borrower, I mean, if this happens, if inflation, uh, all this inflation uh, took place when it's time for you to pay back. You're paying back $11,000, which is the promised, interest rate plus principal. But
Uh-huh.
it's easier. It's less burdensome.
Yeah.
It's much less
It's
burdensome.
you,
The burden on your
it's like you're
shoulder is
paying
much
the
lighter because $11,000 is not really $11,000 a year ago.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
does.
sometimes they try to create in when I say they, it's Federal Reserve, the central banks. Sometimes they try to create a negative real interest rate because if the negative real interest rate condition exists, then it's in favor of borrowing, and if it's in
Yeah,
favor of borrowing, then it will increase borrowing throughout the economy. If if there's a borrowing throughout the economy, then the economy will expand. You understand? Of course, the
yeah,
borrowing by the businesses, not by individuals. If the businesses borrow, they don't borrow it for fun. They don't borrow it to have a party. They don't borrow it to go on a vacation. They borrow it to expand business.
their business.
Makes sense?
Yes.
And doesn't it? So does it make sense why the interest rate has been held very low since 2009? It
Nine.
was not like 0%. They called 0% benchmark rate, 0% interest rate. It's actually between 0 and 0.25. But with such a low nominal interest rate, think about it. And the inflation has been, since the financial crisis of 2008, the inflation has been barely, not even 2%. 2% is the Federal Reserve's target inflation uh,
Really?
rate level. But inflation has been less than 2% all the time. Only this year, I have another data. This year, this is the CPI since 1997. And the inflation first half of this year since last year, first half of last year, like this, July alone, compared to last July, 1 year period, inflation was 5.365. Only this year, inflation crept up, right? But until
Yeah.
last year, um, um, inflation was below 2%, and that was the situation that was conducive or situation leading to uh, more borrowing, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Make sense? All
So,
right, and
can
so
I ask you a question,
we're
Professor?
out of time. Oh, you have a question?
I have a question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, for example, if I want to put money on a CD, certificate of
Uh-huh.
deposit, it's not recommended to put it like for more than 5 years.
Um, yeah,
No?
I wouldn't recommend it because the interest rate changes, and we don't know how the interest rate will behave. For we can't have an accurate forecast for like 5 years. I mean, within 1 or 2 years, interest rate movement we can predict. I mean, but so if interest rate is gonna go down, or still, if interest rate is gonna stay at like 0% level, then um, for the next 5 years, it makes sense to lock your money into a CD that if the CD pays at least 1%, uh, it's a good idea. But who knows? I mean, even by at least by the end of this year, the interest rate will go up. They can no longer, all this talk about tapering. Tapering means what? They are gonna the loose money policy, loose monetary policy, easy money policy will be curtailed. Um, uh, they have been, they have been implementing easy money policy. The market was, inundated with a lot of, money supply. So that's how uh, the interest rate could be, it was, basically held at low level. But then because inflation has creeped up so much, they will have to taper, curtail the easy money policy, at least by the last quarter of this year or by the end of this year. And to do that, they will have to raise the interest rate. If the interest rate goes up by, at the end of this year, then next year and the year after next, we don't know. I mean, the CD rates may go up, so you don't lock your CD into like 5 years. Uh, do it by year and a half. I mean, because if you if you buy CD, normally 1 year, but they give you slightly better rate if you put it for 1.5 year. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. Alrighty. So
Professor,
we're out of time. We're out of time. So I'm gonna have to stop recording and stop sharing. First, stop sharing. Yeah, you still someone had a question still?
I had a question, Professor.
And who Khalid?
Yes, Khaled.
Yeah, okay,
Uh,
go ahead.
there has to be more than one factor to inflation. Can you give me some other factors more than the obvious one?
Well, first, let's start with the obvious one. What do you think is the obvious one?
The obvious one is the like changing the changing price of like wages and production costs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One factor is supply side. From the supply side, if the um, uh, input cost goes up,
Uh-huh.
then wages and everything will go up. And wages go up, factor price will go up. In other words, these days, have you, if you've been, following the news, economic news, you may have heard, jobs are plentiful, but there's a shortage of,
Materials.
workers.
Oh,
Shortage of workers and also material because there's a supply chain disruption.
yeah,
Now
that's
that
true.
that pushes up the factor cost, input cost. Now wages go up, because if and also it was because the government has been too generous with the stimulus pay. Stimulus pay.
Really?
People were not holding jobs because they were getting more checks from the government. Not working. That should stop. That's a stupid thing. Because if they are getting just unemployment benefits, then my understanding is that the if you get unemployment pay, when you retire and get Social Security, your Social Security will be diminished by as much as you have already collected in
That's
your
true.
younger years.
Yeah,
Obviously, you cannot get the benefit today and benefit when you're old, right?
yeah,
So if you get the benefit today, the benefit when you're old must be reduced by what you have already collected.
yeah,
So
it's
think
an
about it.
instant
People
reward.
who are, of course, the government stimulus check is a separate thing from this. Uh, but then so by not working while there is a job, you are actually pushing up the inflation,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
And then
yeah, that's correct.
it comes from the supply side, right? As the factor prices go up. And also, disruption of the supply chain, pushes up the factor price of all the raw materials. Another reason for inflation is the demand, strong demand. So it comes from both sides, Usually the it's called demand pull inflation, demand pull, which comes from the demand side. When the demand is strong, it pushes up the price. And usually demand pull inflation is a good inflation, and they are not that crazy like 5%, 6%. Demand pull inflation is generally around like 2%. And cost push inflation is a bad thing if the because supply gets small, and we are having both cost push and demand pull happening at the same time nowadays. And if the supply if the cost push inflation is coming from the decrease in supply, that's really a bad thing. But actually, we are not really experiencing a decrease in supply side. So it's not that supply side factor is not a very adverse one at this time, because
I think last year it was a problem when factories were
it
closed.
is still good. Huh?
I think last year supply shortages were a problem because factories were closed.
Yeah. But we don't see this year. We don't see that much. I mean, although there's a disruption in the supply side. That's why the factor
there
prices
was.
are going. But it's not deflationary. I mean, that if it is due to supply side shock, that means supply is getting smaller. If the supply is getting shrinking, then the size of the economy is shrinking. But it's not what is happening now. The size of the economy is not really shrinking. So it's not that. We are out of time, actually. We are even. I thought I would give you. We didn't take any break. So I said I would finish at 2:30, but it's 2:45 now already. You guys owe me 10 minutes. Actually, it's more than 15 minutes. Next time, I'm gonna finish 15 minutes early. Okay. And next class will be next Monday. So remind me. I'm gonna have to finish 15 minutes early. Okay.
We don't have class on Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, look at the holiday schedule. We don't have class on. It's also holiday. We don't have class.
What's the holiday?
Okay? It's Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All righty. So.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah, I'm very grateful I'm thankful to Jewish people, because thanks to them, I can take a couple of days off, and everybody should also thank for their
Yeah, thank
holidays.
you.
All righty.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
Professor.
everyone.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.